Okay.
We can.
All right. Let's get started. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. I hope you're having a good time out there wherever you are from. I always appreciate the folks that come to these. We get quite a few attendees, and that's wonderful. So what we want to talk about today is improving business outcomes with Azure ML and cognitive services. And for my part, I kind of tend to see things from the business perspective because obviously those are the folks who are paid and afraid, if you will. So I appreciate it. A little bit about me. I'm principal data architect here at FreeCloud. We have a couple of us here in that role. I've been a technical architect at the MTC for data and AI. I've been in techie since I went pro in 1990. I've been consulting for 25 or so, or probably more years. FreeCloud being my latest and most favorite. And I've been involved in SQL Saturday a very long time. When it was a SQL Saturday, it is coming back, sort of. So stay tuned for that if you're involved in that. I'm also just a Raspberry Pi freak. I just love those little things. I use them a lot for demos and a lot of playtime. I'm going to have one on SQL Server running on a Pi. So it'll be kind of a fun thing at some point. So look for that in the near future. So when I see business today, I kind of see the upheaval that must be going on. The internationalization and just the sheer volume of data these days is just incredible. So there are a lot of decisions to be made, and there are a lot of regulations to comply with. So you guys have your hands full. And I can really appreciate that struggle. I grew up a little bit in the accounting side of the world, so it kind of gave me a big part of my perspective. So one part that I find interesting is when I talk to people about these topics, very often they don't realize just how much Microsoft has put out there in the world as far as AI and ML in their various products, right? For example, with PowerPoint, using it to make our presentation today, and kept suggesting hints on the designer side. If you've done that, you know what I'm talking about. You see the little suggestions it makes. All of that is machine learning, and it's in the background and noticing like what style choices you make. It tries to suggest things that are either similar or what it thinks is better. So it's actually kind of fun. I've actually used them at times. It is helpful. So part of it is also in the Power Platform. A lot of folks are just now starting to think about the ways that they could make small, lightweight applications that don't require a lot of coding experience or a lot of skills to bring that up. You can basically, it comes from a business perspective, right? I want to build a small app that has a targeted purpose. And the cool thing with Power Apps is the fact that you can not only pull in data from a variety of resources, I think there's some 80 or something, but you can also, use it on your smartphone, right? So like I'm an Apple freak and I have my iPhone. I can actually take a picture and have it do machine learning on that picture in the field. So that's really cool for, particularly for field workers who are out there every day repairing things or, doing whatever. But so they can participate in machine learning. So it's a very cool aspect of it. We're going to go through a little bit of that this morning. And Power BI, good old Power BI, it has really grown up in front of my eyes, and I really love it. I think it's a fantastic platform for all of the analytics visualization side. But it has some deep ties in with machine learning. That's some that's just built in that anybody can get to, and others that are only for people who are using premium that you can tie into other things like Azure ML. And last but not least, and certainly not last in the long list of things that are in this category, SQL Server. It's grown too in this regard. We've seen SQL Server switch over from being a Windows-only product to being a Windows and Linux product, and it's not just a simple port of the Windows product to Linux. It's actually a wholesale rewrite in many cases. So it's a very respectable product, and it can run on things like a Raspberry Pi. Like I mentioned, we can do SQL at the edge. So that's a big piece of it. So having Python and R available within SQL Server is awesome. So we'll talk about that too. So we see AI and ML in almost all Microsoft products these days. So when I think about machine learning with regard to business, these are some of the things that you hear a lot about. There are a lot of pre-made models around these problems because they're kind of universal, right? So you want to understand why do customers leave, and what it took to get them, and all those things. So customer churn is a big one for people. Anomaly detection. Credit risk is a great example of where people will use anomaly detection to look at someone's history, let's say on payments or whatever. You can kind of start to suss out what's going on with that person. And so they'll use that for scoring credit risk. Sentiment analysis, we all know what that is, I'm pretty sure, where we basically monitor things like Twitter, for example. It's one of the common ones people do, just to find out how they feel about our company. So that's an important piece. You'll see that in customer satisfaction as well. Using all that input from it, you can gauge pretty quickly what the overall sentiments and score it. Actually make a number that you can now use as KPI. So kind of make things better. Recommendation engines. Well, we all see that every day, right? We go to buy something on Amazon, and the first thing it does is says, and people who bought this also bought that. And sometimes it's funny because it's not logical, but it's more often than not right. It's at least something you would consider. And those are lots of people are using recommendation engines for all kinds of different purposes. Pattern recognition is a great one too, because in pattern recognition, you bring all this data together, and then you apply some machine learning against the data, and it can pick out what the patterns are in the data you might miss. So it becomes critical for sort of discovery, if you will. So. And lastly, the one I picked out here is route optimization. If you've got a fleet of trucks and you want them to get from A to B, you want them to get there not only safely, but you also want to get them on time and the best route to get there. Avoid all the traffic, all those dreams and goals that we all have when we're stuck in traffic. So those are some common ones. There are many more. And more being coming up every day. So we can drop out of this for a second. We're going to go to our old friend Power BI for a minute. Let's see here. I want you to see there's kind of two pieces to the story that are important. Having to juggle things. All right, so if we go into my little demo area here, I've got a little bank churn CSV I uploaded a while ago. If you haven't seen that, I'll show you how to basically just import data like that. The cool thing, if we go back one, we can go into the bank churn and actually do these things like quick insights, right? So it'll take the data, run a variety of machine learning algorithms against it, and give you some insights. Normally, this takes a little while to churn. I did it for you this morning, so you don't have to waste time with it. All right, so it's trying to figure out of all the people, this is a credit card thing. We have blue, silver, gold, and platinum. Majority of the blue accounts have a dependent account. Well, so it's making some correlation between having dependents and the color of the card, which I'm sure translates to whatever capabilities come with that card. And we have others that, they're trying to do client number because it's a number, right? And that's what it's really looking for, are things that are numbers, not things that are text in this case. But you can start to see, all right, well, my client number, people that have a client number are more often married than not, that kind of thing. It's not something we care about. Neither is income category by client number. It's not even interesting. This one might be more interesting because it's trying to correlate the customer age and the average number of months that they've been a customer. And you can start to see where some of the problems might come from. The longer you've been a member and the older you are, more likely you're going to drop out and go get a different card. And it's because, you might say that, an older person may be more experienced with credit. I don't know. But it's interesting. It found this correlation, and it did it on its own. I didn't apply any machine learning algorithm myself. It just did it. You can start to see as well categories. Again, it's using the blue, silver, platinum thing, kind of irrelevant. Depending on. So we've rotated is what's going on. It just keeps rotating. So another way to do some machine learning out in our friend Power BI is to actually use machine learning, such as Azure machine learning and AutoML, if you grow to know what that means. So I built a little data flow this morning on that same data that we just looked at. And I can go into this data flow and do some edit, right? That's just a straight pull of the same data. But you'll kind of notice over here on the right-hand side, if I can get it to switch over, it's a little tricky. We've got this little panel here, and particularly this thing, the little brain-looking thing right here. That means, and it's turned on, that means that we're on a premium account and we can actually get to machine learning. So let's play with that a little bit. So we can say, let's add a machine learning model. All right, now the table, I didn't get fancy, I just left it as query, but it could be, I could call it something else. So these are the different columns in the table that we could actually go and work with. Usually you're going to want to work with a number, right? So these are the different columns that we could do. So what they're trying to do is predict on something. So it's almost always, well, it is always going to be a number. So we could do like months on book. We know that there's a correlation there. And see what our options are over here. There we go. So it's decided, now it's got 28 models it'll pick from, but it's suggesting we should try a regression model, so we'll do that. Now, if this runs a long time, we may just move on, but just know that this feature is in there. Really what I want you to understand. All right, so there's some other things that it's seeing on the data that might work along with customer age. Client number is totally not even interesting, but we did see education level might be, income category, months on book, which we talked about. So let's just stay with customer age. And there's some others that I found. And we'll just say, model 1 or something. And usually give a good description and whatnot. That way other people will understand what it is. So I could just choose to save it or save and train. So I'm going to save and train. Now it's going to go out there and start working on this. And now it's going to go through and find out all those correlations. Someone's already did one in a couple places in here. You can see the prediction reports down here. Those come from this process. So we'll see if it's going to take a long time. We'll move on. Yeah. All right. Maybe come back to this in a little bit because it's not necessarily a fast process. All right. So that's part of what we want to talk about this morning. Also know, just an aside, Power BI itself, you can actually use other techniques with it as well. For example, I can run Python directly within the report itself. There's a special transformation that's already included in Power BI desktop. Anybody wants to see it, I'm glad to throw it up. We can look at it, but it's just a place to hold your code, and then you can do the visualization from there with Power BI. So, all right, let's get started back on our current slide. All right, so we've got quite a few offerings here. There's Azure Machine Learning Studio. There's Azure Machine Learning Studio Classic, which was the first product they brought out several years ago. Blew us all away. And then Power Apps as well. Power BI we just talked about. We're going to go look at SQL Server and Python a little bit. And know that a lot of this machine learning can be done in containers, right? So we can build a model, we can put it together, and we can deploy it inside of containers and all that, but we can also do containers, as many of the, not all, but many of the cognitive services can be run inside a container, so away from Azure. So it's another fantastic little thing that you can do. All right. Let's actually run out for a second. I've got a little notepad here. I keep all those just so we can get to the right place without having to work on it. So as you can see up here, what it did, because I've logged in recently, you can see that I'm logged into my account over here. These are all the choices we have in Machine Learning Studio, including automated ML. So here, AutoML can go through, do the same thing. We can upload a data set, and it will go discover what we could be doing with that data. So if you're not a data scientist, and I know I'm not, but if you want to go out and see what it would do for you, you can do this. You can take AutoML, put a set of data through it, and find out what correlations, what algorithms it thinks are perfect for that kind of data. And it will give you recommendations on it. And I think it'll try up to 28 different models. So it can cut through the clutter pretty quick to help you find a model it thinks will give you some success. There's also a designer in here. We're going to look at another designer here in a little bit. We're going to look at the original, but like image classification, which is basically trying to decide, is it a cat, is it a dog, is it a horse, kind of thing. So there's a variety of models built in, and there are some built-in data sets that you could get because Microsoft has a large set of data sets that you can borrow for these purposes that are free, right? So, and they're not somebody else's data, and they're not your data, so there's no risk. So it's kind of fun to go out and drive some of those around, like the New York City cab information's already been imported out there, so you don't have to do it yourself. You can get to stand up your own account, storage account, and then put the data in yourself, but you don't have to. And these are different experiments. We'll go take a look at the sister product that's still out there and see what that looks like. And pipelines, how to create, first this process or this machine learning model runs, and the output from that is the input for another one, and so forth, pipeline style. And these are the models that you could store or have stored in here. Endpoints where you can get to real time, you can actually connect to those. Compute is important too, because here's where you would stand up a cluster. This is how you create these, that actually do the work, right? So it'll actually guide you through that process and tell you which ones are which, and which are better for which. These are data stores. So they're all different, a couple of these, like the workspace ones, are part of this environment, but the global data sets one, that is something I added. And then labeling, you can label the data sets so that you can pick them out. And then linked services. This is, if you're familiar with Data Factory, you know what linked services are. Basically, you can say, well, this is my piece of storage over here, and here's how you get to it, and here's how you authenticate to it, and here's how we're going to use it. So you can set up linked services, so you don't have to describe this one time and reuse it multiple times. So you don't have to go through that and go through that. So that's pretty much the new link, or I would say the new machine learning studio. The old classic one is here. Let's take a look at it real quick. It is. And when you go in here, I've seen this for many years now. It's still important. It's still important because people that don't know how to do this yet can use this to get quickly to where they can actually try things. So with the experiments thing, you would say, well, that looks a little like there, and you're right, but you would miss out on seeing this, the samples area right here. And the samples area has got lots of samples that you can try out different things. Like here is, I'm going to make these bigger. Here's a data set from UCI where it's got adult data, and I think that's from the census. And then data set processing and analysis for auto imports, and they're doing regression analysis. And then binary classification, again, back to that adult data set. So there's a lot here that you could just go try. Like here's a credit risk one. I'm going to run it, so I have no idea what I'm getting myself into here, but we'll see. So you can see back here. Guess I did it wrong. Let's go this way. Let's do this. You can see back here just how big this can get. I'm going to move this other map. So as you go through, you'll see you have this German credit card information. Now that data set's public. I have it, and I've gotten it from places like Kaggle. If you don't know, there's a place called Kaggle that has not only a lot of good discussion and a lot of synergy around machine learning, they also have a lot of open data sets. So if you get that data set, you pull it in, then it goes through and does a metadata and enhance it where it's renaming and remaking. And then it splits the data, right? You usually do a 70-30 split. You need some data to train the model and some data to run against to verify it. And then, presumably you'll get a better process and you'll have a working model that you trust. So So give these a try. I won't do this one because I'm watching the time. I want to make sure we get everything in, but you're going to find, and by the way, I believe this one you can get in for free, and just, on a free trial license, it'll let you go out there and try it out. So, and I know that that's also true of this one. So, and I've got the links in the deck, so you should be able to find them. All right, did this ever finish? I don't see it yet. It could show up while we're still running. All right, let's go back to our deck again. All right. So the life cycle of machine learning is really important to understand, right? So we have this whole process where you train the model, right? There's actually a step before that where you actually develop the model, and that's alluded to up here. But we build this model, and then the first thing people do is train it, right? You get some data, you try it out, like we just looked into that experiment. And then if it's working and to your satisfaction, then you package that model, you validate it, and then deploy it, and then monitor it. And by monitoring it, you're going to find at some point, sooner or later, that the model no longer fits the data correctly. So you have to make some changes. And then that means you go back through that whole process again. And so there are things to help you do that. Like traditionally in application development, we've used Martin Fowler's ideas originally about doing what we call DevOps today, where we do code writing, we do compiling, we do assembly, we're bringing other people's work together on a project, and then we'll do testing. And once it's been through the test and verification sort of cycle, it gets released as a version, right? Version 1, 2, 3. So the same is true of machine learning. You go through that same process. There has to be the same rigor, especially if you're making calculated bets on things. So there's money involved. So this is the ML Ops process now. And by ML Ops, this is the Microsoft add-on, really, if you want to call it that, to DevOps, Azure DevOps. So it'll add all this to that process. And it's really the same process. It takes in and code gets generated and eventually stuck in a model registry, right, as you can see there. And then an ML engineer validates that and deploys the model, does real-time predictions and all that. So this is really the process that people not always follow, but should be following, because these models don't stay correct forever. All right, so let's move on a little bit. I'm going to take us out to an interesting oil and gas experiment and some of these things, right? So as you go through here, you start to see, they build models for lots of things. I've worked in oil and gas a little bit here in Houston. So they end up using it for a variety of stuff, depending on what part of the business they're in. This is exploration, so it's kind of the beginning of that whole process. So as we go in, we can get it to go. That's what I'm wanting. All right, so smart buildings, things like that. Let's trying to see why. Oh, there. So this is a drilling example. So they're putting the drill down in the ground. Now these days, drilling isn't straight down. It's also horizontal. And you can kind of see that through some of the diagrams here. So if we go into the next piece, you can see the sensors. I'm going to move this out of your way. You can see the drill bit, and unless they have some control and try to find a way to make it better, then what ends up happening is they lose a lot of productivity with it. So you can see here's the model training status, and it's starting to learn about what that drill bit is doing. So the next step is now they're trying to come up with a set of goals, right? Now they have some data. They're going to use precision and speed to kind of figure out what to do with it. So as we go forward with it, did not go. It's not where I thought it would go. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I'd forgotten how this goes. So basically, you change it to the different runs here in this diagram here. And by the third run, you'll start noticing this horizontal drill accuracy gauge and the training status. Let me just move that out of the way. As we move into the third time, it's processed down here in the drill accuracy. You see how close the lines are getting together and how much more efficient it's becoming. So the run versus the well plan. So it improves with machine learning. So it's learning as it goes. Anyway, there's a lot of these. I put a link out there for you. If you go to these machine teaching demos, we'll go back here, and you can see. Now you see how it's got 96% precision, 20% of the speed. So, and you can go to these AI demos up here, and there's quite a few that Microsoft has done. So if you're looking for ideas and how this might help you in your business, this is where I would come. All right, we'll get rid of these. Did this thing ever finish? I don't think it has. Let's continue on. I know we're going to get pressed for time here, so let's take a look at this. This is Sql Server, right? Many of you probably recognize it. So I've created a demo that's called Iris SQL. There was a person who was interested in statistics, or who was a famous statistician, I should say, back in the 30s, that was taking data on irises and projecting what species they would become, you know, and which plants. So they did that from all the measurements. So if we go through this, we can kind of, I'll step you through what we're doing here. So we dropped the database that I've created over here. It's no longer around. So we can then create the database here and the tables and whatnot. They'll do the heavy lifting. I'm going to just run this all kind of together. There's a stored procedure here that's depending on sklearn, and it's going to a little bit later. We're going to see it pull in the Python command to do it. So as we go through, we'll go through here. And this is, by the way, the R example of the same thing. And then we're going to insert the test data. It's going to go get the test data it needs and do that part. Here's the actual start procedure, and you'll notice choosing Python and importing Pickle, which is an add-on tool that for Scikit that it needs to work. And once it's all done, we should be able to get these models. So let's go into here. We should see a model get returned. Okay, so now we got some data, we've got the model, and it's all out there. So now let's go create this procedure that does the species prediction we talked about, and then we'll execute it here. And there you go. So what's going on here is it's taken the data, it's figured out which species ID, what it's predicted to become. So this one, the 00, it's not going to become anything different than it is. And as you go through, you'll find some that do change. 1 and 1, that's not surprising, but 1 and 2 is surprising. So suddenly we have a prediction that it's going to change species. So as you go through. All right, so that's a little tiny demo of SQL Server running Python. But there's a lot that you can do with this. Having machine learning so close to the data is fantastic. Let's go back in here now. I don't see it yet. That's okay. Let's see if we can just go on here. All right. So we've just gone through the SQL Server version. And cognitive services are a huge win. I'm probably going to skip that unless we have time at the end. But just know that these things are already pre-wired. They're sitting out in Azure. You can do a number of things with these. Computer vision, custom vision. But what we're talking about is like things like look at an image, right? Tell me what's in it. Is it it'll come back and say, well, there's a building, there's a woman, there's a dog, there's a pony, whatever's in that image. It will come back and try to guess at what that is. And it does it through the same kind of training exercise we've been talking about. And then face recognition. But one of the things that business really likes is form recognizer. And form recognizer basically will take, let's say your business runs on 4, 5, 10 different kinds of forms. Some may be government forms, whatever they are. But you've digitized them and you put them on a file share somewhere. Well, those can be run through this form recognizer and it will pull the data straight off the page. Doesn't matter that there are all these little boxes and check marks and stuff. Handwriting, it could do, there are custom skills that you can do with this, which will read the handwriting and tell you what the words say. So same thing, speech recognition is really interesting. It'll actually do the captioning below. Like if I turn it on in this particular process, it would do that. Language, there's a lot of different ways, like immersive readers for people who want to concentrate and don't want things disturbing and want simple version of that. That's one way. Language understanding, where it understands the meaning of what the group of words are, the sentences and constructs like that. So the text analytics can go through and give you some idea basically of what the tone is, what the sort of almost sentiment analysis kind of approach. Translator text, I've done many of those projects where we do data mining on existing stuff. You've got a billion PDFs in your organization. It'll do document cracking, right? It'll go read that document from the inside out, find me all the words, but also read all the images inside that document. And if it's in some other language other than English, and I'm an English speaker, I want to translate it, it'll translate it automatically to English, or it'll translate it to German, or it'll translate it to Turkey, whatever language you want it to. Anomaly detector we talked a little bit about. So these are all different things that are ready to go. And so, give those a look when you get a chance. I think you'll come to find that they're highly useful. Knowledge mining with Azure Search is a big deal. I've done a lot of these projects, particularly for the oil companies, where they might have mountains of stuff that they do, not only in their process, but they might have service manuals on equipment. They also might have quality records. They may have inspection records from federal government or somebody else. So they have so much of this kind of stuff. So just as we've mentioned before, it can bring in all that data into it. So, all right, let's see. I think we're going to have to wrap up here. Do we have any questions?
Hey, Roland, looks like you don't have any questions, but I want to give a few minutes here for some people to go ahead and enter some. So,
okay, yeah, no problem.
okay, I did see one question come in through the chat, and it says, how would a customer tackle bias in any of the CAN-ML algorithms?
Well, the canned ones are hard to change. So that would be a problem. But you could also do a custom one that takes that into account. That'd be the way I can think of. Outside of the inputs being different, which wouldn't help you. So I would look at it as a custom sort of problem if you think that a commercial version of the models are biased. That, or talk to the people that build it.
All right, and the next question is Azure Cognitive Service a premium offering?
Well, it depends on what they mean by premium, but they have a lot of it that's free, that you can go try things. Once, of course, when it's in production and being used every day, yeah, it's like anything else. You're going to get what you pay for, what you use, but it's the classic thing of, paying by the drink, right? So you're going to use a lot, you're going to pay a lot, but you're going to get a lot. If you use a little, it's based on consumption. Oh, and on that topic, there are pretty easy ways to estimate, at least get a feeling for what the pricing will be. Like if I went out to, let's see. There is. So you can go out to this area and look at the different kinds of services that you're interested in, like Anomaly Detector, computer vision. Well, let's just pick on one. Let's just take the Anomaly Detector. Okay. This is the region, right? So North Central, our company's kind of headquartered here, so it'll be the one we would use. And as you come down in the calculator, this is what it tells you how much they're going to be. Some people, really big companies may have a little better pricing, but not really much. It's not going to be very different from this. So I hope that helps. You know what? I just think I've just come to the realization you couldn't see my screen, could you?
We can see the your desktop. It looks like says resources calculator purchase FAQ.
Okay. Oh, okay. Good. Just wanted to make sure. Okay, but that's how I do it. If I'm thinking about how, what is the cost going to be to do something like that, that's how you do it.
All right, and we have a few more questions here. It says, Cognitive Services SaaS, excuse me, can you explain about the licensing? No, I'm sorry, Cognitive Services and SaaS development model, any ideas?
So let me see if I understand. What the development model is for cognitive services, is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, I believe
yeah,
they just want to know the development model on any ideas on that.
So cognitive services by themselves have some changeability, right? So when I go and create, let's just do something real quick. we have time. Let's play it. I don't know what I'm doing here, but I'll do one here. Let's do Azure Search. So I'm going to create a resource. Azure Search is the heart of things like the data mining I was talking about, where you're going to go look at documents and do this cracking and all this. Well, one thing you can do once you create this thing is start adding, I should say, skills, right? So cognitive search out of the box, it'll search. You know, it reminds me of Lucene if you ever used it. And so you have this thing that's out of the box, and then but you say, well, you know what? I wish it could analyze photographs and do vision services. So you add that. Oh, I wish it could do handwriting analysis. So you add that. Oh, I wish it could, you know, that's the extent of the modeling you get within the cognitive service. Now, having said that, you could, in theory, chain some of those things together. Like, for example, I might write my own, models and my own wrapper and my own pipeline. And my pipeline might have my own custom model, and the input from it might be from cognitive search, for example. I hope that kind of explains it.
All right, and the next question is we have here, what time is it? 11:51, so we'll go through a few more. Can you explain about the licensing, which I'm pretty sure you kind of already tapped on that.
So there's no real licensing involved here because all of this runs as part of SaaS. Somebody mentioned SaaS, thank you for that. These are all services that run, whether it's using cognitive services or whether it's actually using one of our other tools like using Studio, for example. That is all based on consumption, right? So there's no licensing piece of that. There's nothing you have to go buy. In fact, a lot of good work. I'm actually kind of amused. I use a lot of different tools, but I use PyCharm, which is a couple $100 a year to do Python. Well, there are people that really love Visual Studio Code, which is free, absolutely free, and it works great. And there are people that swear by it, and so they're not paying any big licensing for that. So I hope that helps.
All right, and the next question is, let me go up a little bit, just a little bit more. Sorry, guys, bear with me. Any suggestion as solution architect?
I don't quite understand.
If you want to elaborate more on that, forgive me if I'm saying your name wrong. I think it's Shaz. I'll move on to the next question. Let's see. How to use cognitive services in SaaS software as a service, programming model, best practices.
So that's a great question. You can, as I think you're thinking, build your own, let's say, website using your technology stack and reach over and call cognitive services and have it do something for you and come back. That's a very doable approach. In fact, that's not that different approach from when we use one of the cognitive services within containers. They're not all containerized, but some are. And we can, build a container that has the pieces that we need to do. Let's say, I don't know which one it is, but one of those. Then we can actually release that in the wild in our application. And I'm sure there's some degree of phoning home to get the other parts that it would need. But basically, it's you can actually use containers for that. It's kind of cool. So leveraging these as a service. It is quite doable. A lot of people do it.
All right, that looks like that is all of the questions. I'm so sorry, guys. It's like really loud in the background. Someone's mowing their lawn. Some people are asking for your email address, Roland. So if you can put your contact information back up on the screen, that might be good.
Let's see here. What's the easy way? Let me see if it's on my deck, or if not, we will add it. How's that? Do it.
All right, and for those who kind of just joined in kind of a little bit later, please feel free to download the handout before you guys leave today in the handout section. And also, you guys can get any of these recordings, any of our past recordings or previous recordings, all on our YouTube channel at 3Cloud. So please feel free to subscribe there and follow us on our social media platforms, just so you guys can stay up to date with what we have coming up. If there's another webinar coming up that you guys may be interested, we are constantly posting the information on our social media pages. Like I said before, you guys will receive the recording tomorrow around noon Eastern Standard Time in your email box. So please look out for that. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to contact Roland. His information's up on the screen, and my information is down in the emails. Please feel free to contact him or myself. We'll be more than happy to help you. I hope you guys have enjoyed this webinar. Roland, thank you so much for hosting. We greatly appreciate it, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your Tuesday.
Okay.